Hello. So this week we're looking at a little bit of a shorter video because I had a shoot this past week, just a few days ago, and then I have another shoot coming up, so trying to keep things light. Alright, anyway, we're going to be talking about something I use all the time, my DIY overhead butterfly frame. I ended up getting the frame with fully metal parts down to $115. This frame is not only light, but it is very solid. So let's jump into it. So for those of you that don't know, a butterfly or an overhead frame are basically frames that are larger than 6 feet, typically around 8 feet, which is what the one I'm talking about today is. And basically it's a frame that'll go overhead or off to the side that you can basically put diffusion in, you can put bounce in, you can put neg in, which is negative fill, so if you want like a darker side, or if you want to bounce light, or if you want to diffuse the sunlight, which is what I mainly use it for. Now, specifically what we're going to be talking about is the actual frame itself and not necessarily the diffusion or bounce or negative fill that goes inside of it. However, just to let you guys know what I most commonly use, I use a 1.6 stop polysilk that is made by Matthews. So I believe what Matthews actually calls their version is the white artificial silk. It's the same thing, but I find it works really well, especially in the harsh Texas sunlight, which is often where I'm shooting. So just to give you an idea of what you can use it for. However, again, you can put any kind of diffusion you want. The nice thing about the version I'm making is it's an actual 8x8. So that means you can put in any standard 8x8 rag into it to use as diffusion. You can use a ton of different materials. Okay, so now actually going back to the frame itself. Normally these kind of frames actually end up going for around $500. And to me, that seemed like a really ridiculously high price to pay. Now, certainly there are some benefits to the actual frames. A lot of them set up a lot quicker, collapse down a lot further. However, I found that this frame saves me a ton of money, and for the cons, it's not really worth the price of upgrading, for me personally. So I really wanted to go and see how inexpensively I could make this and still get a professional look. I didn't really want to go the PVC route, as I think it looks and feels a little cheap, especially with how much PVC can flex. So I'm not a huge fan of that personally. However, I ended up getting the frame with fully metal parts down to $115. This frame is not only light, but it is very solid. And frankly, if I'm being honest, clients really do love the look. So let's jump in. But before I do, if you have time and find this video interesting, a like is very much appreciated. Also, if you want to see more like this, a subscription is also very much appreciated. But if not, that dislike button works extra well if you hit it twice. Now, just reiterating, this is one of my favorite setups, especially in the harsh Texas sunlight. I actually did a video on daylight cinematic looks where I went over more specifically the look in general and how I set it up. So if you're interested in looking at that, I believe that's actually up here. Okay, now onto the build. But a quick heads up, all of the links to stuff I used is in the description. All of the Amazon links are affiliate links, which means I get a kickback on any items you may buy. It's the same exact price for you, regardless of if you use them or not, but it does help out the channel. Now, the first items I used were some 8-foot long, 1-inch square aluminum tubes from Home Depot. I believe you can find these at a bunch of different hardware stores, at least in the US. Might be a little tough outside the US, but check around because you might have something similar. So I bought 4 of these 1-inch square aluminum tubes, and then I looked on Amazon to try and find some clamps to connect these together. Now, what I ended up finding were some L-shaped square tube clamps, which I was really excited about getting. However, when I tried to put them on the 1-inch pipes, they just didn't quite fit. So I was a little bummed, but I thought about it and I found a resolution. If I use sandpaper and just basically sanded a 1/16 of an inch off of each side of the aluminum tube on the ends where the clamp would go, then the clamp fits perfectly fine. So really the trick here is to sand each side until you can get the clamp to fit on snugly without having to tighten it down. You want it to be able to pop on and hold just slightly so that you can still take it on and off, but it wouldn't slip out naturally unless you pulled on it. So of course, next we sanded a 1/16 of an inch off of the rest of the pipes, and then that's basically it. The L clamps actually worked to hold them together, So from there, we were able to basically ratchet them down and create an 8x8 frame. Now, what I have found personally is that it's actually really helpful to leave these clamps themselves on the ends of the pipe so that there's one less bolt you have to tighten on each side when you're trying to set it up. Now, there is one snag, and that's when you're trying to put it up. So basically, to put it up, I used some super clamps or some Mafers that I already had, but I know that Modern Studio makes some really great grip equipment and some really great stuff for 1-inch pipe. So that might be a good solution if you're trying to go for a more solid version than just a single Mafer on each side. If you are going the Mafer or super clamp route, make sure you're putting the clamps in the very center of each side, because you really don't want to have this topple over one way or the other. Another safety note is to make sure to always use sandbags. I'd recommend at least 2 20-pound sandbags on each side to really ground it. However, it's really up to you and what you feel safe with. And that's my setup. I'm actually really happy with how light and solid it is. I've used it probably 5 or 6 times now, and it has never failed me so far. So I'd say money well spent. I'd be interested to know though if you guys have any other preferred outdoor diffusion setups. So let us know. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more. As always, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.